I'm Stephen Hicks, and my guest today is Dr. Alexei Marcoux, who spoke at Rockford College on moral partiality in business practice. Dr. Marcoux is a philosopher by training, and he teaches in the business administration program at Loyola University Chicago. Alexei, in your talk today, you're defending moral partiality, right, in business practice, but as you started off, you pointed out that most, or at least a majority, of major business ethicists take business ethics to be about impartiality in ethics. And you took Norman Bowie to be your primary foil in the argument today. So what is impartiality in ethics, and why does Bowie think it's a good idea?
Bowie is just following the general trend in moral philosophy, which is to view ethics as being fundamentally concerned with impartiality. And for many ethicists, they view ethics just as teasing out the implications of impartiality for our actions. What Bowie is arguing, and what I'm arguing is actually mistaken, is that impartiality lies at the very core of ethical business practice. And I think if you actually look at business practice, and if you actually look at the considerations that he offers for why that's so, it actually shows that impartiality, loyal service to another, is what's actually at the root of ethical business practice.
Okay, let's walk through the arguments as you constructed from Bowie. Now, you said he gave three considerations or three arguments on behalf of impartiality. The first one was that business is or should be characterized by arm's length transactions. How does that argument work?
Well, what Bowie says is, he says, look, business should be conducted at arm's length, and to let personal or, that is, the interests of friends or family intrude is often wrongful in a business environment. And I'm saying that that's true. That is true, but it doesn't show that impartiality is at the core of ethical business practice. That is, we aren't under a general duty to bargain at arm's length. I can go through my whole life giving sweetheart deals to others, buying only from my friends, selling only to my family, and so on, and it would be very strange to say that I'm acting wrongfully. There's no general duty to engage in arm's length transactions. Nonetheless, there is a special duty that recurs frequently in business for us to engage in arm's length transactions. So the question or the conundrum that needs to be answered is, how can we simultaneously be under no general duty to engage in arm's length transactions, but frequently under the special duty to engage in arm's length transactions? And the answer is found in agency relations. That is, we're duty-bound to bargain at arm's length when we are bargaining not on our own account, but on account of others, right? And in that situation, we bargain at arm's length as the best way to serve the interests of those others. But what that just shows is that when we're duty-bound to bargain at arm's length, right, we're duty-bound to do so as a way of acting loyally, that is to say, partially, to our principles. So the arm's length transaction consideration doesn't show that impartiality is central to business practice. If anything, it shows that partiality is.
All right, so we can look at lots of business practice. There are people who go into business with their families, so they hire family members. They might do significant deals with family members or extended family members and friends, suppliers, right, and customers, right, and so forth. So none of those are arm's length transactions that require impartiality. Those are all partiality relationships.
Right.
And so Bowie's insisting that all business transactions not fall into that category is just missing the business facts on the ground.
Yeah, well, that's what he seems to be saying, and I think I said in the talk, I said if you take what he's saying, you know, as given, you'd have to conclude that all family business is morally suspect, because a family business is a business in which you hire labor through other than arm's length transactions.
Now, another argument that Bowie makes is the idea that there are conflicts of interest in business, and the way we solve conflicts of interest is by making oneself impartial, not allowing one's interests to dictate inappropriately how one should be behaving. So why don't conflicts of interest as a phenomenon show that impartiality is important?
Well, undoubtedly in the world there are conflicts of interest that are cases of being or having an interest in being partial to some when we're actually duty-bound to be impartial. Think, for example, of a judge in a competition. If a judge in a competition favors favors one of the competitors over the others, that judge is acting wrongfully, and the wrong is being partial when you're duty-bound to be impartial. But of course, judging a competition isn't doing business. Now, in business, there are examples of that too. Government contracting is an example. A government purchasing agent is duty-bound to all who would do business with the government to bargain at arm's length. The problem is that this is very much the lesser part of business. In any basically capitalist economy, right, the great bulk of transactions are not between the government and private business or the government and private individuals, but they're transactions among and between private people. So conflicts of interest in those cases tend to be cases of agents not faithfully acting loyally towards their principles. In other words, favoring the interests of some when they're duty-bound to favor the interests of others. So what I'm saying is, in the middle 80% of cases of conflicts of interest in business, the wrong of a conflict of interest is acting or having an interest in acting partially to some when you're duty-bound to act partially towards others.
Because of your agency relationship.
Because of your agency relationship. And so that doesn't show. That doesn't show that impartiality is at the center of ethical business practice.
Now, you also mentioned Bowie's arguments about fiduciary duties and fiduciary obligations. How is that to, on Bowie's view, provide support for the impartiality view?
Well, that's what's actually hard to discern. In his book, Business Ethics, A Kantian Perspective, he treats this all very quickly en route to getting what he wants to say is Kantian business ethics consists of. So when he observes that to favor family or friends may put a manager in violation of a fiduciary duty, again, that's true, but how that shows that impartiality is central to business ethics is mysterious, because a fiduciary duty just is a duty of partiality, like the duty of an agent to a principal. So a fiduciary duty is a duty of partiality, and so if you violated that duty by favoring family or friends, that's another case of being partial to the interests of some when you're duty-bound to be partial to others. So Bowie does a great job of identifying the considerations that bear on ethical business practice. I could hardly do better than to say that arm's length transactions, conflicts of interest, and fiduciary duties reveal the character of ethical business practice. What is not at all clear is why he thinks that those show that at its core ethical business practice is impartial, when all of those, when we have duties to avoid violating fiduciary duties, to avoid conflicts of interest, and to engage in arm's length transactions, we have those as a result of duties of partiality to the others we serve.
I see.